Welcome to Strictly Salina. I'm Brenda Gutierrez with the Saline Area United Way, and with me today is one of my friends, Angela. Angela, welcome to the show. We're glad you could come today for Strictly Salina.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Brenda. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's good to see people in person in the studio and to be able to share information about different community resources in our service area. We have a 10-county service area, and I hope you're going to tell us about your service area for CASA too. If you would give me your official introduction of your title for our viewers.
Okay, I'm actually the CASA Program Director / CASA Volunteer Supervisor. So I do half-time program administration, half-time CASA Supervisor in charge of volunteers.
And we've known each other for quite a while, my United Way role and your role at CAPS, and there's been change over time. Roles change, positions change. Why? What's your why?
The why for CASA is the children that we serve and also the awesome group of volunteers that we supervise. CASA is a volunteer-based program where we train and recruit,
Yes.
Volunteers to advocate for young children that are thrust into the foster care system by no fault of their own. And CASA can be that one constant, consistent voice that is there for that child throughout the course of their case.
Now remind us again, what does CASA stand for?
CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and actually it's a national program. It started back in 1977, and Judge David Sukope is the one who started the program in Seattle, Washington. And he dealt with cases in the court system and thought that this special, vulnerable group of young children needed special people advocating just for them. And he started the CASA program, and there's CASAs across the whole United States. And we have conferences ever so often and get together as groups of CASA staff and volunteers to do continuing education and learn about other states and what they're doing in the child welfare system and just how we can be the best voice for young children in the court system that have found themselves in foster care.
Now when you say we, how many we's, how many do you have, how many do you need on the volunteer side for helping the children?
We currently have 35 CASA volunteers and we're serving 33 children. The unique part about it is that each year, in some years it's been 234 children have had child in need of care cases filed in the courts here in Saline and Ottawa County. That's our
So you have a two-county.
We have a two-county service area.
Okay.
Saline and Ottawa County. We have a handful of cases in Ottawa County. Sometimes, and actually, we haven't had a lot to where CASAs have been appointed. As an example, this last year, Ottawa County, I believe, had 10 cases filed, and we didn't have any of those cases that became CASA cases. So what happens is that the way we get a case is that the judge that presides over the child in need of care cases, which currently right now that's Judge Parks here in Salina, and he hears a case, and if he thinks that CASA would be a great addition to that case, then he will appoint us. And then at that point, we look at any volunteers we have available and try to make the best fit for that case based on the age of child that the volunteer enjoys or feels like they have the most strengths for working with and is the most equipped to work with. They get to kind of choose or tell us kind of what children they think they would work best with. And of course, these cases so every year we get those additional cases. Well, what happens is that a typical case is on an average running 26 months.
Oh.
So we'll have a CASA on a case for 26 months. So when we start out in January, we may have 35 volunteers, but if half or 3/4 of them are already working on cases in that 26-month period we're talking about, then we have very few to even have available to be able to assign to a case if the judge were to want a CASA. And our goal is that we want to be able to have more children to have the opportunity for a CASA in our courts here in Saline and Ottawa County.
Now, when you mention children, what age? Is like birth to 18, birth to 10? What age group would benefit from the CASA program?
Well, we have children as early as right out, they've been born and
newborns.
whatever, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have children that if they are born and while the mom is in the hospital with the child, they figure out that the mom has had some issues with addiction and perhaps she had those issues while she was pregnant, and then the child ends up being positive for one of those illegal substances, then that child could go into the court system immediately, and then many times on those younger ones especially, the judge will assign a CASA. Because in that case, actually, the child obviously can't speak and tell us what's going on, and so having an additional pair of eyes on that child to help advocate for that child is very helpful.
Yeah. Now, to think about CASA, you've shared some about what they do. When you think about the volunteer, what are some good characteristics for a volunteer when you're looking for a CASA volunteer?
Basically, it needs to be someone who enjoys working with young children. Many times we get retired teachers or retired nurses, and we do still have, those individuals out there who have time on their hands, even within, they have a normal 8 to 5 working position somewhere, and they decide they want to be a CASA volunteer. Many, though, of them are retired individuals that they have a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge, and they don't want, they're not wanting to work 8 to 5 anymore, but they are willing to give of themselves and volunteer for CASA. We say that if you have 2 hours a week that you can spare for a young child, that you perhaps will be a good CASA volunteer. We do find, though, that as we do trainings and such, that we do the training, and sometimes the individuals at the end of the training have decided that they don't want to take a CASA case, but we do not feel like that is I guess a waste of time or not beneficial, because they're educated and they can go and they might see that their next door neighbor might be retiring from the mental health center or might be retiring from the school district and really want to give back to Salina, and this is a great way for them to do that. The main thing to think about, though, is that it is a very rewarding volunteer position, but it has its strife, or I don't know what you'd want to call it, challenges. I mean,
it can be very emotional, is what Brenda's interpretation is. When you're dealing with children and there's a reason why they're a child in need of care,
right.
You have to be emotionally stable also,
right.
and care, but yet remove yourself. That line.
And it's hard because you do. I became a CASA volunteer in 2014 while I was still working at CAP. I started work at CAPS actually in 2001 in the early childhood department, and then I became a CASA volunteer in 2014. And I really found that my background is education, and so working with children and families, I've always done that, but this was a different avenue for me to work with young children. And I did CASA cases while I was working in the early childhood department at CAPS, and then in December of 17, a position came up, half-time CASA volunteer supervisor and half-time victim advocate, and I applied and was very fortunate that we have administration at CAPS that's willing to, if you've got the qualifications and you decide that you want to switch to a different department, you don't need to leave CAPS to get a new journey or a new adventure for yourself, if you get burned out, which I really kind of felt like I was a little bit burned out, and so CASA was just the thing that was out there and available, and I'm very fortunate that I have gotten the opportunity to switch into a different department. And so I've worked at CAPS for almost 20 years when you rack it all up, and it just keeps evolving, and it's just so rewarding, and it's a great work environment. We work together as a team. That's another, as you talk about volunteers, the people willing, we actually pretty much walk alongside that CASA as they work these cases. And every case is different. Children come into care for various different reasons, and our main goal is that we don't end up causing more trauma to that child once we get them in the system. And so that's where CASA volunteers sometimes can come into play. We have people, in the community that are contracted with the Department for Children and Families to provide the case management for these cases. And for whatever reason, when those case managers leave or go to a different position, that child has to go through a lot of different people and start all over again.
What's your name? What's your favorite color?
Yes.
What do you like to eat?
And that's where, there are times that we do have a CASA that something happens in their life and they are not able to complete the case that they started on, and we have to get a second CASA to come in and fill in, but it is more an exception instead of the rule. Typically, a CASA will stay with the case. We say, can you at least commit a year or 2 years to a child? And like I said, the average case right now is running about 26 months. And we'll be doing more CASA classes. We hope to offer a CASA class in the fall. We're trying to recruit for that. So, we hope that as people learn about CASA and what's involved, that they will see if that might fit their personality and what they're aspiring to do, and they might decide to come check us out. And there again, if they find out that it's not for them, no harm, no foul, because we feel like that they are educated about the system and what goes on, and we're just trying to make sure that these children end up in a safe and loving home. And sometimes, and the goal is for us to get those children back with their family of origin. And so we help and we advocate for the child. I started to say we help. The agency that contracts with DCF is the one who does all of the case planning and works with them to get them parenting classes or mental health services or whatever they need, because the plan is to help those families fix the issues that are surrounding them and getting in the way of them being able to parent their child to where the child ends up in foster care. Our goal is to get them back with their family. Now, sometimes that isn't always what happens, and if that doesn't happen, we work for perhaps a guardianship with a family member or a friend, or in other case scenarios, parents have to make some tough decisions sometimes. If they feel like that they are not able to provide all the needs of their child, then sometimes they relinquish their rights or their rights are terminated, and then we work for a good foster home, and then adoptive home for that child to be adopted and provided with that safe and loving home. And many times, parents love their children. And that's what makes this hard, because sometimes as much as they love their child, they're not able to provide the child what they need to be able to grow and flourish and be able to remain in their home.
Yes, when you think about the population of our community and the need, a couple of years for a commitment, obviously your passion for what you're doing, your background and your education, that comes out, and then as you're telling the stories, this is what we need, this is how we need them, your years with the organization that you learn, and then part of this work, it sounds like, is bricks and mortar. You come for training, the paperwork and some of that, and that one-on-one, whether it's the family unit, maybe what would a CASA volunteer do with the child? Would they go to court? Would they take them to eat lunch and dinner? Would they help me out here?
How it works is that a volunteer, we ask them to put their eyes on their child once a month at least, and many times it's numerous times. And so sometimes they will get together with them and take them for an ice cream cone, or they'll take them to get a slushie at Sonic or something of that nature, and then sit down and have a conversation with them, ask them how things are going, obviously if they're old enough to be able to do that, and just check in with them and let them know that they're there for them. The main goal is to really establish a relationship with them, so they know that in the darkest of times, if they need something, they know they have somebody that's in their corner that they can call. And what we find too is that the CASA volunteers answer their phone on the weekends and in the evenings, and at times where you might not be able to get a hold of other people. And so having that available to these children is just a really comforting, it's very comforting to them, and they become a very important person in that child's life.
That listening Yes, to listen, to have that conversation. When other things are challenging or hitting some rough spots, to have that availability that the person's willing to listen and spend some time with, like you mentioned, the type of interest the child might have, what they're to go and do or to listen. Oh my goodness. Well, what would you say are some, when you think about hurdles or obstacles, what are some obstacles with work in the CASA program?
Well, our goal is to get permanency for this child. If there's issues going on that they are removed from the home, typically at 1 year, 12 months, if the case is still open at that point, we have a permanency hearing. And that is to figure out that this child has been out of the home for a year. Are we any closer to getting things back to where they need to be for this child to go back home? Are we getting there, or have we not made any progress at all? And the judge has a hard decision to make, but he feels like, and obviously we all feel like, that children deserve to have permanency and not go from place to place. And some children in the foster care system seem to have a lot of placements, and others they might be in the same foster home the whole time they're in foster care. You just don't know. And that's kind of, I guess, the obstacles is that you just really have to have an open mind and be flexible, and we work as a team to tackle the case, because every case is so different. And so there's no cookie cutter situations. I mean, it amazes me sometimes how many different scenarios come out of some of these cases. You can't say, okay, well, this is how this is going to end up, because you just don't know. Yeah. Timing is everything, and we sometimes get a case in the very beginning. Other times, parental rights may have been relinquished or terminated, and they assign a CASA because they want to make sure that adoptive resources are being explored, and to help in making sure that child knows that this is a long process, but we are going to get through it, and here's someone that can be there for you throughout that process. Other times, everything it's just very different, and so you just have to be open to kind of take it as it comes. And I just always make sure when we train volunteers and such that they realize that they're not in this alone. We are right there with them. Whoever their CASA supervisor is, we will support them, and we will help them as much as they need help. We don't expect them to do it alone, but we're not going to stand over their shoulder to make sure they're doing it either. If they're good to go on their own, then we send them out on their own. But if they want some support or help along the journey, we're there to help them at whatever level of help that they want.
Well, yeah, on the local and the regional and national level, it sounds like some of the resources they have too. So if you're in Salina, Saline County, and you wanted to move somewhere else, you'd have some resources you could transfer. The child would need to stay in our county, but the person that might be interested in doing CASA in their new place, wherever they move to, because nowadays people move a lot with jobs. Yes. So some of those resources that you have. And if you're just tuning in, I'm Brenda with Salina Area United Way, and this is Angela with CAPS, which CASA is in CAPS, physically inside the building, and sharing the resources. It looks like you've got some brochures with you too, some other things. There are a lot of resources for folks that want to be volunteers. You mentioned some of the training and walking along with them to help. It looks like you've got some things if people are interested.
Right. We have some brochures that are put out by National CASA that's got our local information on the back. Change a Child's Story. And that really is the essence of CASA. These individuals are helping change the story for this child, and making sure that they're there advocating for that child, looking at their education, making sure, when a child goes from home to home, sometimes they don't end up getting all their credits when they get older and are in high school and needing those credits. And we're there to say, okay, we need to take a look at that transcript. We need to figure out, does this child need to, what are we going to do for this child to help them make sure they graduate before they get out of care, or, things like that. And if for some reason, they're not getting the mental health services that they need, to make sure that we get that into place. And so they're there to kind of double check things. But Change a Child's Story is kind of a thing that encompasses it all. That's what we're here to do, is to make sure that child doesn't that they have a permanent safe home at the end of all this, and that they are not more traumatized in the process. Another brochure we have is the Caregiver's Guide. We give this out to the foster parents, to the actual parents, people in the case, to explain what CASA is and what they can expect from us. So, but yeah, we hope, like I said, to offer this class in the fall, and we would love to have anybody that's interested in checking us out. Even there is a 30-hour pre-service training is what we call it, and we meet like 7 times, 3 hours a night, one night each week. And then there is a set of background checks that you have to go through. We do fingerprinting and national sex offender check, and we have to verify their social security number. It's kind of a lot of paperwork, and you have to go through a lot of hoops because we just have to make sure
the safety of the child.
Yes, and we have to make sure that these volunteers that we are setting up with these children have gone through the proper channels and are able to be around children and work with them.
Well, I'm glad you shared about the upcoming training. When you think about what's next, so the potential for anyone that's watching our show, if they want to know more, to contact Angela and say there's training come up, brochures you could share, Facebook page, social media, web page, other ways to share.
You go to the CAPS website page, which is capsofsalina.org. You can find all kinds of resources. CASA has a section, and right now, we have another half-time CASA volunteer supervisor, which is Carmen San Martin, and her and I are the CASA team right now. We are hiring another part-time person that will start in August, but we would be happy to visit with anybody, answer any questions. Go to the website, check out our Facebook page. We did have for the first time, National CASA did a National CASA GAL, which is Guardian Ad Litem Volunteer Day, and that was yesterday.
Oh, yes.
And they did that for the first time, and we had a virtual celebration last evening at 6 o'clock last night it was a Zoom because of the pandemic, but I thought it was interesting that we had never had one of these, but we are starting, and so we did a little something. We're going to be dropping that off to our CASAs this week, a little kind of remembrance to say thank you for all that they do, because they give of their time and their talents, and these children really need it.
Well, and they're part of our community. When you think about business people and small business owners and nonprofits and teachers we've mentioned and retirees, the young people too, this is the future of our community. So helping them grow, helping them become the best person they can be, that's a great program. Well, thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for joining us on Strictly Salina. I'm Brenda, my friend Angela and work peer. So glad you could come today.
Well, I thank you for having me.
Yes.